Hello.
Herbie?
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, it's Marc Riley.
Yeah, hello, Mark. Are you well?
I'm all right, thanks, mate. Yeah, I'm fine. Are you?
Yeah, fine. Just finished my day's commitments. I've been doing some nice things. There's a Russian lady called Karina Georgian, who's one of the world's great cellists. She won the Tchaikovsky Cello Prize, 50 years ago, and have been studying under Rostropovich, who's one of the top cellists ever. And to spend time with people like that, and her husband, Anthony Phillips, is an author and a translator of all of Prokofiev's diaries, Prokofiev, Russian composer,
Wow.
who just was a giant, and reading all the things that they said about the fear they suffered under the regime, where they were scared of the knock on the door because what they were doing was a bit revolutionary. Because on concerts, halfway through a complicated symphony, all the audience started singing along because there were hidden Russian folk songs in the music.
Right.
Fascinating stuff.
Subversive, then.
Well, yeah, but I mean, a lot of music should be, but also very romantic and very deep.
So were you performing with these guys today?
Eh?
Were you performing with these people today?
No, I've done lots of work, say, at Dartington Summer School, doing master classes or going to master classes that Karina was over and doing master classes for students. And it's nice knowing people like that. I mean, although I've got, I suppose, a bad reputation for being a pop bass player, deep down, that's you live in.
Right.
It's not for me to judge, I'm just honoured to get asked to go and play. They only ask me to play if they know what I do. Otherwise, I get there, they think, who the hell's he and what's he doing? Why is he playing slightly different to what I expect? I'm not a synthesizer, and a lot of music is synthesized instruments, all done to a click track, which to me was the end of the arse end of the new addition to music, is that incessant thing that doesn't move, and
there's no feel to it, is there?
Well, it doesn't breathe, It's great to dance to if you're a bit out of it, But, and people take too long making records, when I listen to my Miles Davis stuff or go to Glyndebourne to hear or see a new opera. There's no click track going on, and it breathes.
Yeah, well, it's strange, isn't it? Because there's so many people now work to computers and stuff in a lifestyle as well, not just in the studio. And so, they feel the need for the click track, because if the drummer isn't keeping in time with the keyboard that was recorded 2 years ago, then you're all in trouble, aren't you?
Well, and sometimes because of the facility of being able to add and take stuff away, most of it's going along at 120 beats a minute, which is the speed that soldiers march at, and also the speed that an excited heart goes in discos,
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff that, like Miles Davis and all these people, if you'd said click track, they won't know what the hell you were talking about. The freedom that a bass has got, and a good drummer and a guitar or a keyboard and a lead instrument is it's breathtaking.
It's exciting, isn't it? When records speed up and slow down, even when they're not supposed to, it's an exciting thing, isn't it?
Well, I mean, orchestras, it's got to slow down before you hear the gunshot and or whatever else. I don't know. There's something odd when I switch the TV on and the news program, or you hear this by a machine, and all the music's done by one person locked in their bathroom or lavatory or their studio, whatever, instead of the BBC, which is a corporation, which means we owe it. They've got rid of all of their orchestras and they employ one person to do this infernal music. I just think, hang on a minute, is that it? And there are musicians everywhere that are scratching their head because their kids aren't learning it at school, and I think the government doesn't think it's important. But I think music and culture, let's say that, meaning painting or not just football, are really what people need, and that's what is missing.
Well, you were lucky in a way, really, weren't you? Because you were there at the birth of rock and roll, pretty much. And I know you came.
I'll tell you where I was really when it all started. I spent 9 years in the Royal Air Force, marching up and down at 120 beats a minute. That's why I got a good sense of time.
Right.
But we were out in the Far East, so we could go to different bases, whether they were British or American, and get to hear Filipinos playing their kind of stuff, and going to see bands like Woody Herman and whoever else that America, the government would send out to entertain the troops. And it was a great grounding, and I think a lot of things were being invented, and I don't know, I think a lot of things have been taken out. When I listen to let's use Miles Davis again, although it was in the 50s, which was a terrible time, like the Korean bit, there was a kind of, I don't know, an understanding of the colour situation and this, that and the other. But now it's all, I never ever, that's what I love about, let's call it showbiz, is there's no real sort of bad feeling between different religions or this, that and other, because it doesn't matter. When you're listening to or watching, say, the Bolshoi Ballet doing the Polotzian dances, or Queen, I don't mind any of it because it's great. I get angry when I hear Elton John, Reg, his name.
Right, yes, absolutely. You worked with him, didn't you?
Saying that the early records that he did, like the Tumbleweed Connection, or he doesn't really like them. And I think, hang on a minute, mate, that lot of music made you millions, so don't knock it. Because it's like Lou Reed, bless his heart, he said on the radio that it took him 20 years before he could go out and do gigs without having to do music from the Transformer album. And I can understand that. That album only took 2 days to record.
Well, the thing about Transformer is that, I mean, he just, even with the Velvet Underground, obviously culturally they were dead significant, but he'd not really made any headway. And his first solo album did absolutely nothing. So without Bowie and Ronson and you guys helping him along, then he would have failed again, I reckon.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we didn't help him along. I mean, it was a job, and I think Lou had to get away from that circle of, I won't say hangers-on, but it must have been a bit like a London squat, a bit like Andy Warhol's life. They're all a bit, I don't know, a bit crusty and this, that and the other.
Well, I was going to talk to you about Transformer at one point, and obviously we'll talk to you about David Bowie as well, if that's okay, Herbie. But
well, yeah, go ahead, whatever you. If I can't answer it, it's because I won't answer it, put it that way.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I mean, you're probably aware of the fact that a lot of the songs on Transformer had been knocking around for a few years, and Lou Reed hadn't really found the right way of being able to present them. But Mick Ronson and David Bowie just, they sprinkled the fairy dust on them and brought them to life. So what were your memories of working with Bowie and Ronson?
I worked for them, but it was 3 days of rolling up, and there only being 3 or 4 players, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
And come 5 o'clock, 3 or 4 nice tracks being laid and not really hanging about because they might want to redo the voice. And I thought, yeah, it's quite nice. Why I like it, I liked it because of the emptiness of it. It meant that me as a bass player didn't have to go 1 5 1 5, you know, 2 6. I could. There was a bit of space in the middle, so I might be able to play some cello lines or have a bit more freedom. To this day, I get letters from people saying, "Oh, how nice that you helped the electric bass stop being a bass drum with a different pitch." You know, it's
right.
like I thank Lou and David for all the work that they gave me and other musicians, but also, you know, all the, I don't know, the strength that a new generation of people could walk up and down Carnaby Street or hang around Chelsea, all playing Transformer.
So, do you mind if we do just go back away then to some of your escapades with Bowie?
Talk about whatever you like.
So, I mean, well, as I understand it, the first time that you were with David Bowie was for Top Gear in 1968 with the Tony Visconti Orchestra.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you remember of that?
I don't remember much because they were what we called BBC sessions. You know, you get booked to go to Maida Vale and play the bass for unknown people who might have become famous. And we're in and out of the building in 2 hours. And probably you do that if you're doing 20 sessions a week, which means 20, probably about 130 songs. You're not going to remember much about any of it.
Sure.
And it wasn't at the time. Us piano bass drums very rarely heard the real vocal because, you know, they were beginning to realise that they could overdub or replace or add or produce other stuff. But I thought the beat was great. You know, it was a bit slow to pick up on jazz and a bit slow to recognise a lot of northern soul music. You know.
So do you not really remember seeing Bowie on the day or his vocal performance? Was it just a case of an SAS job, straight in, straight out?
I knew David very well, you know, but because we were all busy, my busyness, apart from the business of playing the bass, was the business of having a family and getting home in time to say hello or read them a bedtime story or get up early and do the school run and go off and work. Because I'm a workman, I don't take, like bus drivers, they don't take the bus home, you know.
Yeah.
And David, sure, when we did the Diamond Dogs tour, we all spent time together. I think my happiest time with David was doing a couple of tracks. One was called Space Oddity version 2 because Visconti didn't think the first version stood up very well, and they got the late Gus Dudgeon to produce the version that is a masterpiece. You know, probably did it in a day. And Rick Wakeman's on it with his little stylophone, and Terry Cox on drums, who was in the pentangle. And before you know where you are, you've got this masterpiece. The same as listening to my favourite song of all of David's is Where Are We Now? And I mean, imagine being told that you're very poorly and you've got to come up with something. And every time I hear that song, you know, the playing on it is simple and utterly beautiful.
Yeah, it's a heartbreaking, that one, eh?
Oh, yeah. And my favourite thing that David ever did was on what was called Marc. Marc Bolan did 6 TV programmes, and David appeared on the last one as a special guest. And it was the last thing that Bolan did, really, because at the end of the last number of the last episode, he fell off the stage and broke his ankle. Just an accident. But David sang...
Heroes. He did Heroes as well. Yeah. Yes, of course.
And people write to me saying, who's it on guitar? Was it David? Was it? And it was Miller Anderson. And David just did it on his own, and I think the reason might have been because if Marc had done that song with him, there was so much adrenaline about, and Marc was jumping up and down. I think he and David are two personalities that you can't have two personalities like that together on a stage. It never works. It never worked with when they did all these charity things and put bands together. It was all a bit embarrassing, really.
I was speaking to Steve Harley. Sorry, Herbie. I was speaking to Steve Harley about this just last week, actually, about particularly about the Marc TV program as well, about how they'd obviously had this very friendly rivalry between them since the mid-'60s, really.
Well, I suppose it's friendly rivalry, but it was a kids' live television series, and I get people saying, what a dork I looked with a boot stuck on the end of my bass guitar. And the reason for that is it was a live kids' television show. And Marc, at the beginning of that show, had said, on this one, we got Jam. That's going to be a new band. And as it turned out, it was. So we better put the boot in. So I put the boot on.
Right. I did wonder about that because I used to watch that. I was a massive T-Rex fan, and I used to go and see them right the way through to the very last tour. And so, and I do remember the boot hanging off your bass. And
why not? Why not? I mean, I had a silly pair of trousers on that I wore. Or what did I have? My wife's ski trousers on. I forget now.
Right. Okay.
But, it was all light, and it was done quick. The whole show was done live on that very day.
Right.
And they were kept, and Muriel Young.
And so when Marc fell off the stage at the end, the story is that I've heard that the technicians had all worked the full day and they wouldn't allow anybody to do a retake of it after Marc falling off the stage, and everybody just had to disappear. Is that right?
No, people worked from 9 till 5, and at the end of the show, thanks everyone. And all they did was cut it short, and there's no drama, there's no gossip attached to Marc slipping off the stage. He wasn't off his face, and this, that, and the other. It's quite easy on a stage to get what you call a stage turd. That's a bit of gaffer tape stuck on your shoe,
right? And
you look down, and where you are, you slipped over.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just a sad ending. It was just a sad ending to the series, wasn't it? Because him and Bowie are doing the tune.
No, not at all. I think the series was just 5 or 6 programs for a live kids show. I mean, even the animated clapping was lovely. It was great that Marc did make a comeback, and it's great that he ended his ways like a lot of people, like Tommy Cooper falling over on a live TV show, and Dear David, snuffing it, and he's not even 70, it just is hard luck. But look what they leave behind. It lives on. Not forever, they'll soon not disappear, but there are other greats coming up. And I'm still working, thank goodness. I'm not tied to anything. I've just done a month's tour with Jeff Wayne on War of the Worlds, which we recorded, 40 years ago, right? And when, at the same time that Transformer was done, and other Bowie work, Diamond Dogs, which people knock, but see, I can't tell you much, because I have to keep moving. I'm a moving target, just because I want to play the bass all the time.
Yeah,
not all the time.
Sure.
But,
I understand that, Herbie. I mean, so would you mind telling me a little bit about the American tour when you went off in 1974 and David Live and all of that stuff? What was that tour like?
Oh, the David Live album, you mean? Well, that no record company wants to promote a live album because they're never technically or aesthetically as good as one that's been tampered with and mixed and produced afterwards. I think it's a very raw album, and I don't really think that everything that David wrote was a hit single like some of his stuff like Life on Mars and things like that. It was that really the album and that tour, the Diamond Dogs tour, that cracked America for David.
Yeah, of course.
And it's then there's this massive media stuff saying, Mick Garson says that the reason that the album isn't very good is because there was an atmosphere within the band. No, nothing of the sort. What it was because it was recorded unbeknown to us. I spotted some cables going out of the door and into a mobile van and then back on stage and thought, hang on a minute, it's a live recording. Not that that makes any difference, but, there was a little bit of chat with the management saying, hang on a minute, we should get extra money for doing this. And people say, God, what, $5,000 each? But in those days, there were $4.50 to the pound. So work that out. So that means it works out about 300 quid.
Right.
So it sounds a lot more than it was. And there was no row, not between any of us. People say, is that right? David threw a chair at you. No, where did that come from?
Right,
bits get added on. And I'm a bit of a mischief maker. I sort of kept my mouth shut and still don't let the cat out the bag. I don't think the band was the best band that David ever had. And I found being in America for some months quite intimidating. The further south we went, the more scared I got.
Really? Were you getting any hostile reaction from the audiences or the locals?
A couple of times, yeah, but that's in the days of beer bottles being slung at anyone or anything. And to be in the southern states of America with a bunch of guys that wore stage makeup and had fancy clothes and appeared effeminate was very much a sort of a red flag to bulls of rednecks down in America. It took America quite a while to actually catch up. There's an Englishness about that particular tour. They didn't like the artwork. I don't particularly like any, and I never ever listened to old records of stuff that I played on. I hate the way I play. I know that everything that I play is codswallop because it's not that I'm untrained. It's an odd thing to spend 9 years being in the armed services and then coming out and doing West End shows like Hello Dolly and the odd thing with Eartha Kitt and Sweet Charity and the Royal Philharmonic Pops Orchestra and playing on records that Quincy Jones recorded over here, that film that Michael Caine was in. I forget what it was called. It's my job to roll up and be able to sight read things that are put in front of me, and half the time the producers would book me because I would put twiddly bits in which they either kept or if they didn't like it, they could wipe it and get someone else to come in. I've played on other records of groups that the producer in those days had to come up with the goods, and if the bass player freaked out when the red light went on, if the producer wasn't getting what he wanted, they would book session players.
Well, that was the story with Jimmy Page as well, wasn't it? And Big Jim Sullivan, they would be brought in the same kind of scenario where the guitarists were doing it.
They were two of the great guitar players of that era, and Jim went off and worked for a salary for Tom Jones for years, and then Jim, in the last years of his life, we had a band called Us, the Us Band.
Oh, really?
US. And we just did pub gigs and village halls, and it was fantastic.
I'll tell you one thing about the Diamond Dogs tour that has always been a bit kind of mythological over in the UK anyway, because we never saw it, was the fact that the obviously there's a big set involved, but also is it right that you were supposed to be out of vision whilst on stage during the gigs? You're supposed to be stood behind them.
Yeah, some of the band, the stand-up brass players and the backing singers were behind a net curtain, because otherwise the stage would have been full up with moving musicians, whereas the set included fantastic paintings of like buildings that, funny enough, look like the Twin Towers that get torn down in the end. And there was a couple of dancers that needed the stage floor space to do a little bit of boxing during one of the numbers, and also for a machine during the interval to come on. And it was like a crane that lifted David up 30 foot in the air and him singing Space Oddity. It was all a bit naff, but also a futuristic thing that gradually the technical side of the music business realised, blimey, you know, a bit tacky and a bit odd, but my goodness, you know, what an opportunity. It was before the days of having large television screens, you know, that they could project things onto screens. But
it was groundbreaking, wasn't it? You know, the theatrics, because nobody had really done that with rock before.
Well, it was the David Bowie show. It wasn't the David Bowie band. The reason Tony Newman and Earl Slick, who else on Mike Carson, we were like in front, but I think we all looked a bit soppy because of all the colour and everything else. It was a bit incongruous, but nonetheless fantastic. All of it, everything David did was brilliant. And it's nice that there's one part of his career that people might question, might say, God, a lot of drugs about. No, there weren't. You know, a lot of alcohol. No, there wasn't. It was just an unusual thing for David to have put together. It was originally going to be the 1984 floor show, but I don't think George Orwell's publishers gave David permission to let it be called that. So there was a bit of tweaking, and it became very quickly the Diamond Dogs album. And it's funny, out of all the material that David's done, that people are picking the one album that was such a breakthrough for David in America and a lot of other places, that because it's a live album as well with it, people are saying, hang on a minute, you know, this is it's full of cocaine. And no, it's nothing of the sort. It's just there are people like Tony Visconti and Brian Eno that David would use people who were at the top of their game and who still are, those that are alive. And of course he's going to use the best he can get. And that happened for a little while, to include Tony Newman, who was a great player. And
well, you quit the tour at the same time as Tony Newman, didn't you? And then the new band came in and finished the second half of the American tour off.
Yeah, well, the tour was divided into two. There was a month gap between the two tours. I think, like most shows, you know, they break it down and improve and this, that, and the other. And some of us were offered the opportunity, or we asked for the opportunity to not back out of a contract, but, you know, just we were contracted to do that bit and asked to do the next bit, or had said, I just said, I can't do any more. Why not? Well, actually, because when I get back home after 6 months, I'm going to lose a lot of work. You know, I've been asked to do such and such a show and this and the other, and I was missing my family, and I worked it out that the money that I earned, which wasn't very much, but it never is for working musicians. We're down the bottom of the list of the pay situation compared to what footballers get. And I worked out that I could pay my mortgage off. So on my bike, I didn't really want to be in the southern states of America. But to do the same material over and over and over
It's funny because you were saying earlier on how, if you're doing all those sessions and you're doing, 100 songs a week, it's just a complete opposite of that, isn't it? It's just doing the same 15
right.
songs.
I mean, and I've got, over the next 2 months, about 10 jazz breakfasts that we do in Brighton, and each gig is a different lineup and a different material on each one.
I remember I was in a band in the 80s and we went into a pub in Brighton. I think we played there the night before and stayed over. And I went into a pub and Humphrey Lyttelton was playing with his band.
Oh, bless him, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And he lasted till about 95 or 96.
You take care. Thanks very much, Herbie.
Yes, bye-bye.
Bye, mate.
Bye.